Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Bleach, Please. I'm so excited today. We have Kellen McKenzie. Kellen McKenzie is a salon success business coach and so much more to unpack today. So I'm so excited to have her here. For those of you who may not know who Kellen is, she is one of our Salon Scale partners and has dedicated a lot of her time to helping other salon owners elevate their business. So without me telling you too much more, I would love Kellen to come on and tell you a little bit more about herself and a little bit more about what she does.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am Kellen. I have been in the industry for 16 years. I started really just behind the chair working as a commission stylist, like probably most of us do. And I fell in love with the education probably about 8 years into it. And I became an educator at a salon that I was working at. Absolutely loved it. And then my journey continued on to opening my own salon, which then it expanded and grew to a employee-based salon and started independent education with color techniques. And now I'm full-time business coaching.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being on here. I'm so excited. Our audience is going to be excited to listen to that journey from stylist to salon owner to then, taking a moment of pause and really reevaluating what impact you wanted to make into this industry. So I really want to dive deep into that because I think there's a lot of salon owners that are they're bleeding out right now. They're working really hard, growing a company, working to grow other people's careers. And sometimes they, have that moment where they forget about themselves and they forget about the power that they can give. So let's kind of dive into that topic right now is where were you in that mindset when you said, you know what, I have this team, but I'm ready to take that next step. And, what was that like? And how did you make the decision to move forward as a coach?
Yeah, it's not an easy decision at all. For me, it was thrown in my face a couple of times that I needed to pivot or change or try something else on that would serve me better and my mental health and my family better. My wellness journey really led me into listening to myself and being in this industry and how I grew up. I was never really taught how to care for myself with really mentally, physically, emotionally, like what to eat, food, and just how to be active and things like that. So my wellness journey really started when I opened my salon, and I knew that I had to change something because my hands were hurting. I was getting really bad cramps, and I couldn't move my hands back and forth. And I was 28 years old when I opened my first salon. So that gives you a little backstory. I started to do acupuncture. I started to radically change my diet. I tried to figure out maybe some foods that weren't working well with me. I was already, eating gluten-free. I tried all these other things, and it led me down this great wellness path that I started to eat better, listen to my body. Then that led me to taking care of my mental health better. And along that journey, I was a salon owner, growing a team, trying to learn about business, grow a business, and learn how to really manage it all, which is really hard to do, and especially not having those skills and not really being taught how to do that before. So really for me, it was one little thing. It was, it's always like one little step leads to the next thing, and one little thing for me that made me feel better just took me on this journey, like, oh well, I need to feel better this way, I need to feel this way, and little things just started to come up. And it was an evolution over about 7 years of realizing my business partnership and I weren't aligning anymore on where we wanted to take the salon. And we had opened it really just the two of us, wanting to do our own thing and be independent. I had really loved growing a team and educating the team, wanted to take it to the next level. We ended up dissolving that business, and throughout the stress of many life things that came along with that and losing my whole team, starting over again, it was a real wake-up call that it wasn't just my physical body that needed attention, but my emotional and mental health as well that I need to take care of. And really, I didn't slow down and stop because financially I had to keep running the business and working really hard to maintain a location in Boston that was really expensive, and my apartment in Boston that was really expensive, that it was just a matter of COVID, and COVID really did make me hit pause. And that's when I didn't know it at the time. We kept the business going and all of that, and I kept my team meetings going, but I eventually had the gift that my team members weren't ready to rejoin when we did reopen, and I do look at it as a gift, because that was the time that I said I asked for a change, and I asked for time to take care of myself. So I had to just trust the process and trust the universe, and I jumped and I said, I'm going to sell the business location, get out of the lease, and get out of, I needed a new start, and I knew I needed to get out of Boston. So that's how, long story, but that's how that ended up coming about.
Well, I think, it is important to trust the universe. I think that's an important thing. And it's funny, sometimes the things that we ask for, they come and they show it to ourselves in moments that we might not know when they come, but they come. And ultimately, I think your story, resonates with a lot of people that went through the mashup of COVID-19 and how it really pushed a lot of those people that were salon owners. They had between 5 to 7 employees, and they got to a point where it was, maybe we'd be better off to move into a co-op situation or move into our own. And the fact that you've maintained the community and maintained the communication just speaks volumes of who you are. And I'd like to kind of just talk about you as a coach, because I think now that's kind of, in my opinion, I almost think that's what you're kind of going for, is like, how do I help other people understand this part? So when you're speaking about teaching salon business, what would they get when they come and speak with you?
Yeah, I always say my coach changed my whole business and life, and it led me into a lot of my wellness journey, because she was really focused on that and making sure we take care of ourselves. So with her grace of, saying, I really think I can help people. I'm at that point with all of my experience now. And she was like, absolutely. So I ended up saying, well, let's see what my people want from me. What do they need from me? And every time it comes back to business and finance and figuring out the numbers and understanding that part, because really what my students are coming to me for is they've got they're busy hairstylists behind the chair. They've got the branding down. Most of them are independent stylists, either working in a suite or a small salon that they've opened. I've worked with many of employee-based salon owners with, anywhere from 2 to 7 employees. And I've worked with a couple of salons that have business partnerships, because I also have that background. So I've taken a lot of what I have experienced and I've really incorporated into my coaching sessions. And sometimes you think you're coming to me for understanding your numbers, but really it's about really connecting with your employees, or connecting with your social media posts and storytelling around really what your salon has to offer that's different. So, it's really about whatever my students need it to be. I love the business and marketing side. I've been, I just fell in love with Instagram and the capabilities and the possibilities of it right away. I was an early adopter. I've built multiple businesses on Instagram, and I really do think that if you embrace it and you show up for truly whoever you're serving, it really does come through. So my students may start with figuring out their numbers first. We may work work in like their benchmarks and budgets. And, that's how like salon scale has always shown up, as like color is always one of the biggest expenses for my students that we try to get a handle on. And then it may morph into, the actual marketing side of things, and it may morph into some other avenues, but that's typically where we start, numbers and business.
I get this huge sense of calmness with you. And I feel like you take chaos and make it calm.
Yeah.
So no matter what, if we're looking at a finance or we're looking at bringing in new products to how do we train, how do I deal with, maybe paying employees, or how do I dissolve a partnership? It seems like you're taking your experience and helping create calmness in some of these situations that feel like, how am I ever going to get through this? So, again, thank you. That's not easy. And I think when we look at some of the challenges that salons are facing right now, is having the courage to move forward or move through something and move into a new direction. And it seems like that is something that you took the courage, you took the step, and you've done that. And now you're being able to plant the seeds in the next generation so that they never really had to feel like you did, right?
Yes.
So I kind of wanted to talk to you about that around pricing specifically. Now, charging a customer is already an emotional charge. I would like to ask you, as a salon coach, how has that changed? Do you find it harder to charge your coaching clients than charging as you were as a salon owner or as a stylist? Is it harder to charge your coaches right now, as a coach right now?
That is such a good question. So I have been, in the industry so long and working for myself for such a long time that I got to a really great price point, and I really did have to shed a lot of that charging, belief system and everything I had, a limiting belief, if you will. And I started the coaching, and I really had no idea. Like, I'm like, what do I charge? How do I base this? And then I was trying to take my own advice of like, okay, well, let's just break this down. And it really is like everything I teach my students. It really is simple facts, and we can do it a few different ways. You can start, it all depends on your business model. You can start lower and build the demand and then move up, which I did as a stylist. That was pretty comfortable for me. And then you could also do it in a way where you say, this is how much money I want to make, and this is how much I want to work. And then you can kind of break it down into the hours and almost do like an hourly sort of rate. So I looked at it a couple different ways, and I just started. And that's kind of my best advice to give for everything. It's like, sometimes we don't have all the answers, and we don't know what even if it's like a number, right? We don't know what the right price is or what the right number is, but we just kind of get started and go. And then my first coaching student, who I love, and we still work together from time to time now, she did a few months with me. And after we were done, I think with our third month, she was like, you really need to charge more.
She flipped it back on you.
Right? I'm like, okay, all right, yep. So that was good. It was great to get started though, and I got the momentum going and got groove down, and I hired like a virtual assistant to kind of help me get some of the business stuff set up, because I'm like, I don't know this part of the business. I don't know how to do these automations. So I am all about, and I will teach all my students this, I'm all about finding people that will do things for you, that can get it done fast, that you don't have to sit there and learn how to do everything. Sometimes you do, and I know all of us entrepreneurs know that, and we have to get scrappy, and we have to do everything and learn it. But luckily, there are people out there willing to do things and can do it really good and do it a lot faster. So I'm like, delegate all you can, send that role off to someone else. And that's kind of how I got started. And I hired a virtual assistant with that. She works with a lot of coaches, and she really helped me, because I was like, I don't know, is this right? Or I don't know what to charge. She's like, well, you're really undercharging. I was like, okay, well, you're the second person to tell me. So that's kind of how I came up with my current pricing and business model, is a little bit of, just getting started.
Exactly. I think, I can totally relate to this. Price is hard in this industry, and when you become a coach or a tool or a software or whatever it is, we understand that cash flow is an issue in a salon, and the salons really have a hard time with understanding really what they need to charge in order to keep the lights on. So when we become coaches and when we become, software, even though the ROI, even though we know we could put $800 to $1,000 back in your pocket a month, we have to dial that rate back because we know the emotion that's going on in the business. So I think ultimately, I think that's so funny that your client actually spun that back at you and was like, now thank you, but you need to charge more now. We've had that happen a couple of times with the salon scale too, but they always say that one quote, which is price is what you pay, but value is what you get. So I think what happens is when you start something new, you might not understand the value. So if you're a new stylist or a new coach, you might not understand the value you're bringing. You can write it, you can try and market it, you can try your best to believe it. But when you start achieving value with your guests, whether it's a customer you're training, you're coaching them, or a client in your chair, when you understand the value you're giving, so much easier to lean into pricing. That's why I think a lot of stylists, when they become very successful stylists, is because they know truly in an hour the value of their time. So that's why they say 20% of the hairdressers make 80% of the money. It's because those hairdressers are so dialed in on the value that they get that they are not letting price stop them from what their value is.
Totally.
So I kind of want to go into a little bit diving into this whole pausing right now, because we kind of talked about this earlier. And I know Kellen and I were talking about this before we came on here, but I want to dive into that. There's so many people right now, when the world is screaming for you to pause, why is it important to listen to that?
That is such a good question. It will show up in so many other ways. And I will say that, right? Like the world's screaming at you, your body may start screaming at you, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional, like things come out in so many different ways. Like for me, stress, right? It's all in my jaw. So like grinding my teeth, clenching my jaw. I've had teeth problems when big emotional events have happened in my life. And some things that I've learned, like at one of my spiritual healing retreats, was like, that's when you don't trust yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, right? And so when we start to see things come out in our body or feel things or physical pain, it really can, it's been manifested in different ways, right? So we're like, what is that coming from? And where is that stress really happening? And it takes you to pause and to really listen to yourself, however that practice is for you, quieting your mind, meditation. And I tell people all the time, like I was doing a series on Clubhouse for a long time, like weekly. And one of the things that kept coming up was someone asked a lot about, well, I just can't do the whole meditation thing. And I know that a lot of people will say that and they can't sit still. And I'm like, it can be a moving meditation. And really that's how it started for me. I do completely can zone out now and lay down on the floor and do the whole thing. But for me, it started by walking, right? Like outside walking, being mindful, really just being mindful of what you're doing instead of being like earbuds in, podcast on, or book is on, or which is great when you want to have that time where you're taking things in, when you're mindfully and intentionally what you're listening to and what you're bringing in, of course, and making sure there's intention behind it and you're just not listening to everything around you because it's too much of a download and you can't actually process it. So for me, I really had to be mindful of that because I did live so much on Instagram for so long, and I did build my businesses on Instagram, right? And being young and having all these pains and things come up, and it was manifesting in different ways. My stress was, so it took a toll on my health in many ways. And I I really did have to pause. Like my body finally was like, I'm breaking down, like, hello. So
Stop.
that, right? Like stop. And I didn't really know what I needed to stop doing, but it was like one day I was just like, I got to get outside and go for a run. And I wasn't a runner. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I literally, it was before I opened my salon, and I literally just started running like out of nowhere, and my body just needed to move. I needed to get some energy out, and it led me to really committing to running. I started to like do 5Ks and then 10K. Then I did a couple half marathons. I'm like, who am
Good
I?
For you.
Right. So it was just this intention behind, okay, I need to listen to what's going on. I need to listen to what's going on in my mind and in my body and unplug. And then that led me to more and more and more things. But you just start somewhere with what you have, put your shoes on and go outside, and then I'd be like, okay, what can I do during the winter? And I just kept doing it. I just kept showing up for myself, and you have to put yourself first. And that's really what led me to, and it will keep showing up. Like the same lesson keeps showing up until you learn it. I will say that.
Yeah, it's like
so it kept
you, right?
showing up. Yeah, it was screaming at me a few times.
I think it's so important to listen to the pause. And I think, we are living in such a polarity world right now. And I think when, we think about that, it's kind of leaves us into a moment where we take in that energy, and it becomes really stressful of, should I do this? Should I do that? And I think even too, in the salon industry specifically, when we think of that community over competition, we've been very competitive. We've been trained to be competitive, right? If that client's not in your chair, it's in someone else's, right? And so we have this like huge FOMO effect and this huge fear that like, if we're not grinding and hustling and staying late and doing that, then you're going to lose those clients, and you're not going to be able to be a success story. And then you get people that have wisdom like yourself that say, listen to the pause, listen to that, listen to your spirituality, listen to this language that's kind of coming through. And ultimately spirituality is a language, is a practice, much like astrology is a language, right?
Yes.
And if you don't really understand this language, they say, just look up to the sky, because the sky is going to speak to you. Right. And I think it's really important to understand that the signs are all around you. Whatever you lean into, sometimes you have to stop and have a pause and realize that the signs are right there, and it's time to slow down and find out what is the strategy of your life. Strategy is what happens when you focus on what not to do. Mm-hmm. It's not what to do, it's what you're not going to do anymore. And I think that is your strategy as you move forward. And it's so inspiring to see how you've moved through this. And I kind of want to talk about how you went. I want to kind of talk about translating this into the feeling loneliness. So sometimes when you move into these new worlds, these new steps, you have an enormous sense of feeling lonely. So I'd like for you to speak towards that, because there's a lot of people that probably are scared to take the steps forward into it, whether it be a coach, whether it's leveling up their business or whatnot. And they're afraid of the loneliness. So talk about how we might feel that way, but how do we move through that feeling?
Yeah, it is definitely something that is constantly that comes up, of course, as this fear of the change, and then what's my life going to look like, and am I going to lose people? Because we do hear things like, well, when you move to the next level, or whether it's in business or spirituality or whatever, and you're moving, you're kind of growing, right? Whatever your growth is, you outgrow people in your life. And this could be your clients, this could be your teammates, this could be your salon you're working at, this could be so many things. And then when we do make that one step, I think if we've all grown in some ways or switched salons or whatnot, moved up the, growth ladder, there definitely has been times of loneliness. And I know for me, I've experienced at every level of my career. So I'm not new to that feeling. I definitely experienced it as a commissioned salon employee when I was the only one driven to show up and do the education, and I would be made fun of because I'm the one really wanting to like advance my career and learn more. And I would show up with enthusiasm and I was really motivated. And one day you just kind of realize, I don't fit in here anymore. Like I've outgrown this. And that is a lonely feeling, because that in and of itself is everything I knew about my career, yet, as of that date. Right. And those were my colleagues and who I thought were my friends and whatnot. Right. So when you start kind of evolving and growing wherever you're at throughout your career, you probably have experienced those little bursts. And it doesn't get easier, but the more you outgrow things and the more you're on a path where you are listening and you are pausing and you are, making these positive changes, then it's a feeling of, I know that I'm going to be taken care of. I know that I was always okay. And you think back of all those experiences you've been throughout your whole life, throughout your career. I mean, even probably outgrowing friends in high school, right? Or college or things like that. And they just might not align with you anymore. And I think that has been some of my hardest lessons that I really had to dive deep into and realize that I need to be friends with myself first and understand my wants and my desires before I'm taking care of everyone else's, because that is just something I do really naturally. So those were lessons of mine that definitely kept coming up. It's like, you're not alone. You have everything you need within you. And for me, that's what I remind myself. And so like my practice is definitely reminding myself of those things and affirmations and, meditating and things that help me stay aligned and connected to my spirituality and things that really do help me stay centered. And like you said, calm. And it is a practice. It's not something that's natural for a lot of us. And it does take time. So when you go through growth and you may shed some parts of you or shed people or shed a salon or shed whatever is happening, it is that next step that you just have to trust yourself and trust you're going to be held and trust the universe with that next journey. And that's kind of where doors start to open. And I say it all the time, is when you make the leap, sometimes that thing you don't quite know is there yet. But when you make the leap of say, you know what, I trust myself and I am going to move forward, things just start unfolding. So, it's a pretty magical thing.
I love it. I think to echo that, I think, oh my goodness, I feel like many aspects of your life, you're going to feel lonely.
Yes.
I say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yes.
And I think most importantly, the feeling of being lonely is just the universe telling you that it's time to make more room and attract the people to come in to accept the new you. So sometimes when you might feel lonely, that just means that we're opening up the floor again to have more people there that is going to show up for the new you, what you've wanted, you've asked for this, right?
Yes.
And it's just your job to take the next steps forward. And I think sometimes there's a level where we wait to show up in our lives. And so if we're waiting to be accepted, or we're waiting to become this coach, or waiting to move on, like no one's going to do that for you. You have to take those first steps. So loneliness is just really kicking your butt to move forward to really what you want and open yourself up for what's to come.
Yes, exactly.
And I can kind of, again, just relating that back to our journey here at Salon Scale, same thing. I jumped from running a very successful commission-based salon. And my mission was to help those girls and guys to be very successful entrepreneurial mindset stylists. And when this came, I focused mostly on the impact. I focused mostly on what can Salon Scale do for the next generation of stylists? What can it do to make sure that people don't maybe feel as insecure or feel like they may not know and have something that's in their pocket that, reminds them that they are kicking ass and doing great things. So that really, I focused on the faces of the impacts that I was going to make. And that really helped. In the early stage, it was not fun. It was not fun to barely be able to survive because this is a startup.
Right.
You can eat only so much craft dinner in Ichiban, but, but you watch the success. And so as I push this back over to you, Why do you care? Why do you care so much that you left? And what do you want to say if for someone that wants to come work with you? Why do you care so much about their success?
Oh, that's so good. I think it really comes down to, I love being an educator. I love sharing stories with people of things that have helped me where maybe I didn't have that help. And, where I just wish someone understood me or understood things a little bit better. And I would sit through a class or a business class or numbers or something, even thinking back in like college classes or high school. And I'm like, I wish someone would just come over and tell me, like, it's okay if you don't understand this. Like, I always thought I had to know everything or understand it. And sometimes it would just be like gibberish. So I tell people all the time, like, that was me. It took me a lot to really understand a lot of these things, running a business, being a team leader, being an educator, being understanding numbers and working them out so much that I'm like, it's okay if you don't understand this. It's like just part of the journey. You don't know until you know, and really put it into practice. So the first few years of running a salon, really for me, it was so hard. We went through a lot of financial problems, a lot of IRS problems. I mean, I went through about 3 accountants. I had to take one of them to court. I mean, it was just like lesson after lesson after lesson with numbers, and I had to learn, So it really, I tell people, like, your story is never a shock. Like, it's never too much. Like, I'm trying to stop some of those really hard things that happened to me from happening to you. So people come to me maybe right out the gate and like, this is great. This is like where you want to be. And there's never a dumb question, like, ever. So that's my biggest thing, is I do incorporate a lot of my spirituality into my coaching. And, I say, like, I work with spiritually minded, with salon owners and business owners and hairstylists, because it does connect on that level. And I am a baby astrologist too. So like I take astrology classes, and I love incorporating like people's strengths, and I like to talk about them in like ways, like with their business partnership. And I love them to almost see, like, I'll like bring in some of the pieces of astrology into their team. So I'll be like, okay, that's why she's like this. She's a Pisces. Like, let's break this down. And, I try to help people see their strengths and tap into them, instead of being like, you shouldn't, maybe you shouldn't run the numbers. That's not really your gig. So let's find someone that's an earth sign here. So like, that's where people and I, like, we start to really connect, and it's been really cool. So nothing's ever too stupid of a question, but those are the people that usually align the best with me, are ones that are ready to kind of think outside the box, or take their skills and just and magnify that, like whatever their strengths naturally really are. Let's make that work for your business, and then if we have to delegate some other roles out, we will.
I love it. Oh, well, you can just see your passion when you speak about that. And I think there's just so much power in just stepping outside of yourself and your own internal thoughts and processes, and understand that the world doesn't always think like you. And so
Yes.
When you have staff and you have a team, where you might feel that person's internalizing it one way is not the reality. And instead of letting those things fester, or, beating yourself up, like you said, because you don't know how to study, a spreadsheet, let's say, that's just find the right people that you can attract, and use your communication, use your power to be able to attract the others that have those things. So with that being said, unfortunately, it's time to wrap things up. I would love to continue to chat with you, but I would love to understand 2 things. Number 1, what is coming up for you, and how can people find and connect with you?
Awesome. I'm still kind of in a pause place. So I do take on a certain amount of coaching students, where it is limited right now. I am hopefully will be onboarding a couple new students for the fall. And I've got a lot of great students I'm working with that are opening salons. So like I'm still continuing a lot of journeys with some of my students. I've toyed with possibly doing some courses and whatnot and building them. And I'm just trying to pause to see what is going to be the right fit for really my audience and what my people need the most of for me, because there's only so much you can show up for one-on-one coaching, so
Exactly.
I'm here to serve the industry the best way possible. Wellness is always my top priority. Mind, body, spirit, I think it's all really connected. So I do believe making sure my message of that is always out there, even though I do like to talk about business and numbers. But you can definitely find me on Instagram. Sometimes I pause on there as well, but on Instagram and on my website of both are Kellen McKenzie, Kellyn McKenzie, and the website is just kellenmckenzie.com.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Kellen. It's been wonderful getting to chat with you today and be a part of this episode. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Is it worth it? Let me weigh in. Is your biz out here trying to make it? Are you charging out your color fees? Well, have you seen